Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar series was made possible in part through the generosity of Pentec Health, and we thank them for their support. My name is Mike Spigler, and I'm the Vice President of Patient Services and Kidney Disease Education here at the American Kidney Fund. Before I turn the presentation over to today's speaker, I'd like to direct your attention to the control panel you should see on your screens. All participants are on mute, so we won't hear you, but we welcome your questions. If you have a question, please type it into the section of your control panel titled Questions. We'll see your questions and we'll do our best to answer them, either by replying to you in the questions box or out loud during the last several minutes of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on our website, kidneyfund.org/webinars, within 1 to 2 weeks. For those of you in attendance who are health professionals, we're glad you've joined us today and hope you'll recommend this webinar to the patients you work with. However, as a friendly reminder, this webinar is not accredited for continuing education credits, and you will not receive a certificate upon completion. If you believe that your accrediting body may offer you credits for attending this webinar, we'll be happy to send you a certificate of attendance after today's session. Simply email us at education@kidneyfund.org. Without further ado, allow me to introduce today's speaker, Carolyn Fiebig. Carolyn is originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and has been a dietitian in the Washington, D.C. area since 2011. Currently, she is the kidney transplant dietitian at the George Washington University Hospital. Prior to her current role, she worked for a dialysis company as a dietitian. She found her passion for renal nutrition when her nephew was born with only one kidney. In her career, she seeks out opportunities to educate the general public about the importance of early detection of kidney disease and the importance of a healthy diet for kidney health. She currently volunteers with the American Kidney Fund, the National Kidney Foundation, and is on the NKF's Capital Area Medical Advisory Board. Currently, she is working with George Mason University, the University of the District of Columbia, and the American Kidney Fund on a diet compliance research grant for dialysis patients. In her spare time, you can find Carolyn walking all over Washington, D.C., taking pictures and searching for new and delicious restaurants or farmers markets. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm super excited to be here. Just another little bit of background for me. Like Mike said, I'm from St. Louis. I've been in the Washington, D.C. Area since 2011, and ever since I learned about kidney disease and their diet restrictions, I've just been really interested in helping people with that, especially with my nephew only having one kidney since he's been born. But enough about that. Let's just jump right in. So, what is protein? I mean, like, you hear your dietitian talking about it all the time. You hear your nephrologist talking about it. It's protein, protein, protein. But really, what is protein? I mean, protein comes from the food that we eat. It's one of the 3 essential building blocks necessary for our life. The other 2 are fat and carbohydrates, and these are all macronutrients. And these are like fancy words, but basically a macronutrient is what's going to give us our energy. We measure our energy in the form of calories. And so protein gives us calories, fat gives us calories, and carbohydrates give us calories. And together, these all build together to make up our food supply. So you're eating like a steak or some pasta, these are all going to have these different macronutrients in there. Sorry. So protein is most commonly known for building and repairing our muscles. When we think about our muscles, we really mainly just kind of think about like our skeletal muscles, the muscles like our biceps or our triceps or our quads or our calves, and these muscles that are moving our bodies. But other muscles are going to be our organs. So your heart, your kidney, your liver, these are all muscles. And when you're sick and your body needs to be repairing itself, it's going to be repairing it with protein. Protein also plays an important role in all of our body's functions. And not only does it help build and repair muscle, it also like aids in our digestion and metabolism. So like how much energy our body is using, and it also helps produce antibodies that help fight infection. So when you're sick, your mom's chicken noodle soup really was medicine, you know, because you really do need that, that protein to help with okay. So what is protein? Protein is actually a long chain of amino acids. And amino acids are just some fancy, you know, molecules that get linked together in different formations and become protein. When you digest protein, it gets broken back down into these amino acids. Our body, or there's 20 amino acids out in all of our food supply, and our body is able to make all of these but 9. These 9 amino acids, they're called our essential amino acids. And you have to get these essential amino acids, the missing 9 that our body can't make, from food. Amino acids, so protein is helping us build and repair our muscles. Amino acids are also used in forming hormones, our enzymes, and neurotransmitters, which are basically the signals that our brain tells our body and like how our brain communicates with our body. And you can find protein in both animal and plant sources. So complete proteins. What is a complete protein? Basically, a complete protein is going to be a food source that's going to contain all 9 amino acids. All those 9 essential amino acids that our body is not able to make is going to be contained in those complete proteins. Here's a list of the different 9 essential amino acids. The only time you're ever going to need to know this is when you're taking a test to become a dietitian. But where can you find amino acid or complete proteins? You're going to be found in your red meats, which is like chicken, or which is like your beef, your pork, your lamb, goat. You're going to find it in your poultry, which is your chicken, your turkey, your duck, fish, eggs, dairy. So mainly you're going to find your complete proteins in meat sources, but also soy and that grain quinoa that everybody's been talking about are also considered complete proteins. Research, you hear your dietitian talking about, well, we want you to eat animal protein, all this, you know, because it's a complete protein. And it's also shown that people on dialysis actually have an increased benefit from eating protein that comes from animals. Animal protein is better absorbed and better used by our body. The same thing with iron. The iron that you get from animals is actually better used and better absorbed by our body. So your dietitian is going to be, you might even hear her use this term like, eat more high biological value protein. That just means protein coming from an animal. And when you're on dialysis, your protein needs are actually higher than the average American or the average person. And it's because of 2 main reasons. Number one, when you're on dialysis, it's wonderful. It removes all of the waste buildup, but it's also going to remove some of your protein in your blood. So you will need to eat a little bit more protein because of that. But the main reason is because your body, dialysis is putting stress on your body. It's putting stress on your heart, on your blood vessels, on everything, because it's actively removing these waste products. So your body is under stress. When your body is under stress, your body needs more protein. And so thus your protein needs are higher. The recommended amount of protein for people on dialysis is a little bit higher than the average American, like I said. On average, people should be eating about 0.8 grams of protein per kilo. But when you're on dialysis, we want you to eat more. So that's 1.2 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilo. And most people on dialysis actually know what their weight is in kilos, because that's your dry weight. So think about it. This right here, this slide is saying that somebody who is about 70 kilos, or that's about 154 pounds, needs to have about 85 to 100 grams of protein per day. And 60 to 70% of that, or 9 ounces, need to be an animal source protein. So that's about 6 to 7 ounces of meat, about 2 eggs, and a half a cup of milk. And I know that milk is one of those on that list of foods that you're not really supposed to be eating, but I do believe that the recommendations are still that you can have about a half a cup of dairy a day. But you also are getting protein from other sources. So from plants, you can get your protein from plant sources as well. But plants, like we were talking about, don't have all 9 essential amino acids besides the soy and the quinoa. So that means you're going to have to eat them in combination. You're going to need to eat plant A with plant B because that's going to provide you with all 9 essential amino acids. And when they're paired together, that's called a complementary protein. A lot of people who are vegetarian or vegan need to make sure that they're meeting their protein needs because they are eating and they're making sure that they're eating these different types of proteins together. Really what we're looking at, you should be eating legumes or beans with grains. So beans have a certain type of amino acid and grains have different amino acids. And paired together, they're going to give you all 9 amino acids. So if you want to eat beans with grains or beans with nuts or beans with seeds, that's going to make sure that you're getting all 9 essential amino acids in that meal. And they just need to be eaten in combination throughout the day. They don't have to be at the exact same meal, but throughout the day, if you're going to eat beans, we need you to eat some rice or some pasta or some bread to make sure that you're getting all 9 essential amino acids. I know you're probably thinking to me, like, oh my goodness, what is this lady talking about? She is talking about beans, and beans are on the big no list. We should not be eating beans. But actually, I like to think about, like, you can eat a more vegetarian lifestyle, but you should be doing it like per meal, or maybe once a day, or maybe even just choosing a day to not eat any meat. But what you're going to do, the way that you can do this is by choosing, like, let's say you want to go and have like a burrito and you want to have like a black bean burrito. As long as you're doing beans and rice without the chicken, that's okay. But what we want to do is make sure that you're not doing beans, rice, and chicken, because that's going to give you too much potassium and too much phosphorus in that meal. But eating a more vegetarian lifestyle, that'll help you with, cholesterol levels and energy levels and weight by adding, and also with constipation. I mean, like, beans have a lot of nice, good soluble and insoluble fiber, and that can help with your bowel movements. But I think a good rule of thumb is if you're going to eat some beans, don't eat any meat in that same meal. And I mean, I can't stress this enough. Always talk to your dietitian about doing something like this, because let's say your potassium levels are a little bit too high or your phosphorus levels are a little bit too high. I don't know what your levels are, but your dietitian does. And you can sit down and say, hey, I really want to make sure that I'm getting enough protein, but I also want to, start eating a little bit more on a vegetarian lifestyle. How can we do this together? And your dietitian, I'm sure, has a whole bunch of wonderful, great ideas to make that happen. But when in doubt, ask your dietitian. This is a nice little slide. It kind of shows you about the potassium in different foods, right? So we always talk about, like, eat all this meat, but you need to limit your beans or your lentils or your nuts because it has so much potassium in it. And that's kind of where I got that rule of thumb, eating beans. If you're going to eat beans, don't eat any meat. It's because if you look at this, you can have a half a cup of beans, like black beans is about 300 milligrams of potassium, whereas 3 ounces of like a beef roast is even higher in potassium. It's 320 milligrams. 3 ounces of chicken, like a chicken breast, is about 220, which is a great amount of potassium. That's like the perfect. It's like the golden standard. And you can always like figure out how much 3 ounces is if you look at your palm. The palm of your hand is about 3 ounces. So when in doubt, look at your hand and say, okay, well, that's about 3 ounces, so I'm okay with there. And 3 ounces of chicken is about 21 grams of protein. So there's a lot of protein to be had out there. The next, you always, when your dietitian comes around every month to give you your labs, she's talking to you about your protein levels, but she's showing you a number, and it's called albumin. And albumin is a number that we renal dietitians really like to talk about. But what is albumin? It's a protein that we get, that our liver makes from the food that we eat. I like to think about the albumin as like our body's mailman. It's out there delivering all the necessary nutrients like vitamins and minerals and energy and hormones and different like drugs that your doctor has prescribed to you throughout your body. So it's out there doing all these important functions. It also, not only is it delivering all these things, it's also helping keep the fluid in your blood so that way it's able to be removed during dialysis. It's also helping you fight infection. So there's a reason why your dietitian is, talking about albumin so much. It's also hard to keep your albumin at that, magic number that she's wanting you to keep it at, which is a level of 4. And albumin is kind of fickle. I always like to say, if you look at it the wrong way, it's going to go down. But it can be affected negatively. So it can go down if you have an active infection, if you have inflammation. I'm not talking about like swelling when I'm talking about inflammation. When I'm talking about like inflammation is when your body is under stress, which dialysis makes your body under stress. So your body is always inflamed when you're on dialysis. So inflammation makes your albumin lower. Swelling or edema, when you have too much fluid on and your feet and ankles start to like puff up, that can lower your albumin. When you have too much fluid and it sits on your lungs, that's going to lower your albumin. Or anytime you take a trip into that hospital, number one, your body is under stress, you might have an infection, you might have too much fluid. There's a whole lot of reasons your recent hospitalization is going to make your protein low, your albumin low, and not. Also, the food maybe not be the greatest when you're in the hospital, or you're feeling sick and you don't want to eat enough. There's all these reasons why your protein might be lower for these reasons. And these may not be sounding like they are like a food issue. Infection, well, how can you do anything about that with food? But when you're not feeling well, a lot of times you don't eat as much. And when you're not eating as much, that will also lower your albumin level too. So again, back to, grandma's chicken soup. Let's see now. When you're on dialysis, you get that wonderful little report card that your dietitian comes around with you, and every month they're checking your labs, they're reminding you to do, to take your binders and to avoid tomatoes and potatoes. And they always are probably saying, oh, we need you to eat some more protein because your albumin is a little bit low. We want you to be at a goal of 4 or higher. There is a reason for that. There's been a lot of research out there showing that people on dialysis who have an albumin level under 4 have higher risk of death and have more hospitalizations. So if your albumin is 4 or higher, there is a lower risk of death and fewer hospitalizations, which, that's always a really good thing. We talked a little bit in a few slides ago about what can make your protein go down or that albumin number go down. And one of them was like the edema or the swelling or the fluid on your lungs. Fluid, really, your albumin can be dilutional. And if you have too much fluid, that's going to make your protein level or your albumin level lower. So it's important, so important, especially in these hot summer months. It's already getting hot here in DC. I think the humidity is super hot. And I know that the folks here are really wanting to drink more because they're feeling really dehydrated. But it's really important to follow your fluid restrictions. So that way the fluid doesn't leak out of your blood vessels. I was talking about how albumin helps keep the fluid in your blood vessels. And when the fluid is in your blood vessels, then it's easier for the dialysis machine to remove that fluid because your blood is going into the dialysis machine and then they're using a mechanism called ultrafiltration that's removing the fluid from your blood. And then it goes back in to your body, and your body will repopulate the blood with more fluid. And then throughout that 3 to 4 hour time circuit, you're able to remove, 2 to 5 liters of fluid per treatment. The more fluid you remove, the harder that machine has to work and the harder it pulls on your heart, and it puts an extra strain on your heart. So having less fluid on, following that fluid restriction is really important for multiple reasons, not only lowering your, or keeping your protein level nice and high. What we don't want to happen is that fluid to go into your third space. And third space, I mean, you probably have heard your doctor or your dietitian talking about it. It just means that space that's in between the blood vessels and your cells. And that's when you notice, like, when you look at your feet and they're all swollen, and if you can even push down on it, it kind of leaves that divot. That's the fluid in your third space. And the dialysis machine is not able to remove that. But if your albumin is nice and high and your protein is nice and high, you're able to, it's going to keep that fluid in your blood vessels, and you'll be able to remove it easier. Again, I'm talking a lot about fluid, but fluid is so very important when it comes to protein and so very important when it comes to your health. Too much fluid can cause a lot of problems. Some of these problems are swelling around your feet and ankles. It can also cause fluid to go into your lungs or sit on your lungs and could possibly end up leading it, hard for you to breathe, or you could even get pneumonia. Also, too much fluid can stretch out your heart. You have this extra volume of blood, and so now your heart has to work harder to move it through your blood vessels. And it's not like it's working harder and getting stronger, it's actually getting stretched out like a stretched out balloon, and it becomes weak and floppy. And so this makes it harder for your heart to work, makes it harder for you to get rid of the fluid, and also continues to make your protein or your albumin low. You can also put extra stress on your body because now the dialysis machine is having to pull the more fluid off harder, and it's making more strain on your heart, which is also going to could lead to all sorts of different things, not only like hospitalization. So, and then too much fluid makes your protein low. And then this whole little cycle, if your protein is low, the fluid's going to leak out of your blood vessels and it's going to go into your third space, and it's just this little cycle. So cutting back on that fluid and making sure you recognize trying to only hit that 32 ounces of fluid per day is a really important goal. Really, but your dietitian is sitting there telling you, eat more protein, eat more protein, eat more protein. How do you do that? How can you make your albumin levels higher? You're like, I'm eating protein at every meal. I'm not hungry. I can't eat any more protein. How many eggs do you want me to eat a day? Oh my goodness, what can I do? The next few slides, and actually the rest of this presentation, is going to really be about tips for boosting your albumin levels, because I think it's really important to understand what it is, but really let's talk about real life. Let's do, how can we make this happen? First and foremost, back to this fluid. Drink 32 ounces of fluid or less a day. And a fluid is not just water, it's soda, it's juice, it is tea, it's coffee, it's soup, it's ice, it's Jello, it's ice cream and popsicles and ice. Anything that is liquid at room temperature is going to be considered a fluid. Summertime is the hardest time because it is hot and humid and people want to drink more. You really got to figure out what works best for you. Some people like to just fill up a 32-ounce glass, and they know that's what they get to drink all day long. Some people like to have 4 8-ounce glasses and so they feel like they get to go back, but that's whatever is your personal preference. Also, eating a protein source at every meal. It doesn't have to be an animal protein source. We just learned that like beans and rice together make a complete protein. So like I said, if you want to eat beans, go ahead and eat those beans. Don't eat a piece of like meat at the same time though, but make sure you're always having a protein source at every meal. And this sounds kind of crazy. Eat a bedtime snack. A lot of times we keep on hearing about like, oh my goodness, you shouldn't eat when you go to bed, all these things. And if you have acid reflux, eating a bedtime snack is maybe not the best choice. But I'm not trying to say like eat a big meal. I'm talking about an apple or a half of a sandwich. It doesn't have to be a protein, heavy meal. It's like an apple. An apple has very little, if any, protein in it. But it's still going to give us energy. And the reason having a snack right before bedtime is a really good thing is it's been shown that when you're on dialysis, your liver, which is actually storing your energy, only stores about half the amount of energy than an average person. So if you think about it, you go to, like, you're using energy all of the time. When you are eating and you have food in your stomach, like right after lunch, which is kind of basically now, your body has an instant source of food. It's the food that you're eating, it's the food that you're digesting. But your body's not going to use all of that food, and it's going to store the rest of that in our liver in a form of energy called glycogen. But what happens is when you are on dialysis, your body's only able to store about half the amount of glycogen. So you go to bed and you're not eating when you're asleep, obviously, so your body has to use your energy stores. Halfway through the night, you have used up all of the stored energy or that glycogen, and now your body needs to have more energy to breathe, to function, to roll over, to do anything, for your heart to keep on breathing or beating. All of these things take energy, takes calories, takes, sugar or glucose. If you eat a bedtime snack, then your body will use that energy at the first half of the night. The second half of the night, so you're going to use your energy stores in your liver. And then you wake up and you eat, a bowl of oatmeal or something, and then bam, now you've saved all of your energy. And what happens is, because like I said, protein is a macronutrient way back in the first slide. It's giving us calories. Well, your body is going to use those calories. It's going to say, oh, I don't have any more of this stored energy. I'm going to use something that's quick and easy. Wouldn't it be great if it was using our fat? But it's not. Fat takes a long time for it to break down. It takes a lot of energy. So it's going to take your protein in the form of albumin, and it's going to use that to sustain you overnight. So eating a bedtime snack, I can't talk about it enough. It's so great. Another thing, who knew, but Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts are really, really, really super high in an antioxidant called selenium. Selenium actually helps to fight the type of inflammation that lowers your albumin levels. So one Brazil nut a day, not two, not three, one Brazil nut a day has shown that that will raise your albumin levels from a 3.5 to a 4 within like 6 months. So you can go and find just the Brazil nuts. I'm not talking about walnuts or peanuts or cashews or anything like that, because they don't have the selenium content that these Brazil nuts do. It's the selenium in these Brazil nuts that are going to help raise your albumin, because it's going to lower that inflammation. You don't want to eat too many, just one a day, because you don't want to mess with your potassium and phosphorus, because those are always very important to make sure that they are within range. So one Brazil nut a day, that's an easy, quick fix. Also, let's say you just got out of the hospital and you don't have much of an appetite, or you just, you've got these taste changes going on, you just don't really want to eat anything, and it's just, you don't feel like eating. And so you're not getting enough calories, you're not getting enough protein, all of this. Well, if you don't have much of an appetite, I always think a nice, good little trick is to have like some chicken salad or tuna salad or egg salad in your refrigerator. And every time you walk by that refrigerator, you get like a wheat thin or a little cracker that doesn't have any added phosphorus, and you dip it in there and you eat a little bit. If you walk back and forth in front of your refrigerator like 10 times a day, that's like a half a cup, and that's going to give you at least 20 grams of protein right there and some calories, and that'll help boost up that level. It's just a trick for everybody who, is able to eat 3 meals a day and, eat snacks. No, this is for somebody who really just doesn't have an appetite and just doesn't know what to do, and, your dietitian is saying, oh my goodness, I need you to eat more, I need you to eat more. Well, this is a great way of making that happen. And then there's the protein powders and protein bars, protein supplements. We are all very, very fortunate right now that we live in this world of everybody thinking that they need more protein than they do. So that means we've got a whole bunch of different protein powders and bars to choose from. Some taste better, some don't, but now you get to make those choices. Also, now with the new food label laws, you have to have potassium listed. So some protein bars have already started doing that. I think potassium doesn't have to be listed until 2020 on the food label. I could be wrong, but it's not 100% yet. So what you want to do is make sure that you're finding a protein bar or protein powder that has the potassium listed, so that way you know that you're not getting too much potassium. Also, talking with your dietitian, saying, hey, I found this in the grocery store, what do you think? But, of course, we are going to talk about these different protein supplements now. So when choosing a protein supplement, what you want to do is make sure you read the label first. I can't, enough to talk about reading those labels. You're looking for a protein supplement that has at least 10 grams of protein in it, and also is lower in potassium. Your goal should be a protein supplement that's under 200 milligrams of potassium, but certainly stay away from anything that has over 350 milligrams of potassium. And again, some protein supplements do list the amount of potassium on there, some don't on their labels. Right here, these protein supplements, these do list potassium on the label. I've starred the different drinks and bars that have over 300 milligrams of potassium. So the muscle milk protein powder has over 300 milligrams of potassium, but the muscle milk low calorie protein powder is actually under 300 milligrams. Dome bars, Lara bars, all these different types of bars. But again, when in doubt, go to your grocery store, take a picture of it, and show it to your dietitian. That, I think, is the best way to do it. You and your dietitian working together can find the best fit for you. Again, here are some snacks that aren't like protein bars. Special K high protein cereal. Like you could, when you're on dialysis, I know some dialysis units actually allow people to eat in there. These would be a great thing to bring with you if, just as a little snack, or something that you can just carry in your purse. The Special K protein cereal, 14 grams, that's in a half a cup, and it only has 125 milligrams of potassium. That's fantastic. The Kashi Go Lean with 9 grams. What you really want to do is making sure that you're getting the most protein for your bang with the least amount of potassium. And again, staying away from anything that's over 350. Really, anything over 300 you kind of want to avoid if it's going to be something you're going to be eating a lot of. Again, be aware of any protein supplement that does not list the potassium content. A good rule of thumb, if the protein supplement is not listing the potassium on the label and it's made with peanuts or any type of nut or seed as the first or second or third ingredient, it could very well be high in potassium, because nuts, as you've seen on previous slides, are actually pretty high in potassium. So that's a good rule of thumb, to avoid any of those protein supplements if they don't list the amount of potassium on there. Also, and the reason we worry so much about potassium is because potassium controls muscle function and muscle contraction, and remembering that your heart is a muscle. So if your potassium is too high and or too low, it can cause your heart to miss beat and not to beat the way that it's supposed to, and you can end up having a heart attack. So here are a few supplements. I feel like more supplements than not actually list the amount of potassium on there, but here's a few supplements that don't list the amount of potassium. So again, if it's made with peanuts or it has peanuts in the first couple of ingredients, you want to avoid those, because most likely they have too much potassium. Also, sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to, eat a granola bar because that's going to be, high in protein. But actually, a lot of these don't have very much protein in them at all. Like, I use granola bars, chewy granola bars, crunchy granola bars, any of those milk substitutes. And you think, oh, it's going to have plenty of protein in it. It's made from nuts, but it doesn't. So be wary of that. Also, sometimes your protein is under 3.5. That your albumin, when it's under 3.5, a lot of times dialysis facilities will give you a nutritional supplement, either in the form of a bar or in a form of a drink. And that'll help boost your protein levels, your albumin levels. But also, let's say your protein levels are under 3.5 for a long period of time, maybe like 3 months or longer. Talk to your dietitian. There is a form of protein that you can get during your dialysis. It'll go right into your dialysis. You don't have to get stuck again for another another time. It'll just go right into the dialysis machine and will fill in this extra protein during your treatment. And talk to your dietitian. She knows about this type of treatment. Talk to your nephrologist. They might even be able to find a company that can help you with your insurance, and maybe you won't even have to pay for this. But really, in conclusion, protein is a really important part of our diet. You have higher protein needs if you're on dialysis. Albumin is that type of protein that your dietitian is talking about, and the reason she is because it holds the fluid into your blood vessels. It helps you fight infection. Research has shown that it keeps you out of the hospital. And making sure you take your phosphorus binders. I didn't really talk a lot about this, but I'm sure your dietitian has talked to you plenty about your binders. But even with a snack or with, a protein supplement, you need to make sure you take those binders, because where there's protein, there's going to be phosphorus. And anytime you're looking to change your diet habits, you need to talk to your dietitian and your nephrologist first. And it's just best to have everybody who's on your team knowing what's going on. And I do believe that now it's a question time. So I think people have been writing in questions, and Mike is going to do a rapid fire question, and I'll do the answers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carolyn. We definitely have more questions that we've gotten in, and if folks would like to ask more, we do have time. Feel free to enter that in the questions box, which is on your dashboard there. So first question from one of the viewers is, why does having an albumin level of 4 or higher mean less hospitalizations and deaths? Do they understand kind of what the mechanics of that is happening?
Oh, goodness. Yes, they do. Now the question is, do I? No, it's all about, again, the inflammation, because when your albumin level is a 4 or higher, it shows how it really means that maybe you don't have any infection, or your inflammation that causes stress on the body is lower and you have less inflammation. But that is a really, really, really great question to ask your nephrologist, your kidney doctor, about.
Okay. On the inflammation piece, also, what are some other good sources of selenium besides Brazil nuts?
Wow. So Brazil nut is the highest. Selenium is called a trace element, and so they are found in very small amounts in lots of foods. But really, Brazil nuts has the highest amount, and that's what's going to make you. That's really going to be what affects your albumin level, is the Brazil nut.
Okay. If you do have acid reflux, what type of food would you recommend before bed, and how soon should it be before bed?
Okay. Certainly, we want you not a more carbohydrate food. So an apple or like some crackers. We don't want anything that's going to be sitting in your stomach for a long time. So things that are going to be like that have fat in them, or that have a lot of protein in it, because fat and protein sit in your stomach longer, which is great because when you're trying to lose weight, and it makes you feel full longer. But when you have acid reflux, that is going to make the acid go back up a little bit longer if it's sitting in your stomach longer. I would say recommend, you could, 2 hours to an hour beforehand though, That would be just fine. You would still get the benefit of the snack. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that you need to lay in bed right before you fall asleep and like, you know, eat an apple, but like 2 hours before bedtime, that could be a great rule of thumb for everybody, because when you lay down, the acid reflux, it makes it a little bit easier for it to come back up. So 2 hours.
Okay. We have someone that's asking about information regarding protein for patients with chronic kidney disease stages 3 and 4.
Okay.
And are there major differences, and where could they get more information?
There are two schools of thought out there. There is some new research coming out, and it actually is saying that in the beginning we used to talk about we want to restrict protein, and that's still the rule of thumb out there. But now they're kind of looking and saying that they don't really need to do that. Some good resources would be the American Kidney Fund, the National Kidney Foundation, DaVita.com, Fresenius.com. They all have really good peer-reviewed journal articles. But I think the most important thing is not about restricting protein, but restricting different types of protein. So eating the more vegetarian style proteins, the beans and the whole grains and things like that, if their potassium levels are okay. It would be in the fish and the poultry, and avoiding red meat. Red meat actually is a vasoconstrictor. That means it's taking your blood vessels and making them smaller. And so that means your heart has to work harder to move that blood. And then your heart has to work harder to move the blood. Your blood pressure goes up, so your kidneys work harder to lower your blood pressure. Your kidneys do so much, who knew? But so avoiding red meat or limiting red meat to like maybe once a month when you have stage 3 or stage 4 kidney disease, I think is the most important takeaway for protein and early CKD.
Okay. Someone says, why am I always hungry now that I started dialysis?
Oh, that's a great question. Dialysis, you have higher energy needs when you're on dialysis. I mean, like people who don't know anything about dialysis, they think, oh, you're just sitting in that chair for, 3 hours, no big deal. Well, your body is hard at work when you're on dialysis. You may just be sitting there, but man, oh man, that machine, when I keep on saying it's pulling, it's actually doing that. It's putting your body under stress, and it's working your body, and your body is using all this energy. And so your calorie needs are actually higher. So I think having some lean protein snacks, having some low-calorie snacks, just kind of throughout, like in your purse or in your dashboard or by your chair, is a good way to get in some calories, but not the Doritos snacks. I mean, I would love to be able to eat Doritos all day long, but that's no good for anybody. So like having some lean, low-calorie snacks is important.
Thank you very much. So if someone doesn't like apples as a snack, are grapes as good as apples as a snack? And if so, red versus green, any difference?
Really no difference between red versus green. Some people might say, oh, there's more antioxidants in red grapes versus green grapes, but I think you'd have to eat like a bushel of grapes to make that be any type of difference. Grapes are low in potassium, they have like 0 phosphorus, but they are high in calorie, and they're high in sugar, and that's what's giving them the calories. Now, it's natural sugar, so that's great, but if you have diabetes or you're trying to watch your weight, maybe choosing, like 15 grapes, which is a serving, versus like 30 grapes or something like that.
Okay. Where does the excess protein that we intake go? Does our body get rid of it, and how? Yes.
When your kidneys are working the way that they should be, your body gets rid of the extra protein or the protein waste through your urine. Protein waste is actually broken down into ammonia. So when you pee, you smell that ammonia smell, that's partly the waste of the protein. When your body is, but really, mainly your body, all the protein that we eat is being used. It's being turned into albumin. It's being turned into other types of, blood proteins. It's being turned into muscle, and it's really just the waste product that our kidneys are filtering out. When your kidneys aren't working the way that they should, then your body's not able to filter out that ammonia, and that's what has caused your BUN and your creatinine. These are levels that your doctor and your dietitian are probably talking to you about, and your nurses, but that causes those to rise, and they can cause toxic levels in your body and cause like funny tastes in your mouth and even, kind of dementia signs.
Okay. Someone that's a dialysis patient is saying, I've tried changing my diet in the past, but I always go back to old eating habits. Do you have any tips for making new habits stick?
Gosh, ditto. Yes. Start small. Don't try and change everything all at once. I think that is the biggest that's the biggest factor that leads to failure and to falling back into old habits. Also, don't do any negative self-talk. I mean, we're all going to eat that pizza one of these days. And, just because you ate that pizza doesn't mean that you are, that you're bad or you're doing the wrong things and things like that. Say, okay, I had my pizza, now I'm going to move on and not feel bad or guilty about it. The best advice I can give anybody about changing diet habits or trying to lose weight is, number one, write down single thing that you eat. Don't lie to yourself. If you ate that Jolly Rancher, write it down. Number two, don't buy those chips. Don't go down that aisle in the grocery store. Get rid of it at your house. I know, things are expensive and you don't want to throw away food and stuff like that, but dang it, throw it away. Get rid of it. Don't have it in your house. If you have family members, beg and plead to them, say, please, 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 please do not buy Chips Ahoy cookies because I can't not eat those. Maybe you don't like Almond Joys and say, if you really want to have a snack, buy those Almond Joys and keep them in the house. But the most important thing is write down every single thing that you eat. Don't shame yourself and feel bad and negative when you slip up. We all do. And don't have it in your house.
Okay, great. That's probably tips we all can use, including me. You talked a little bit about a vegetarian diet and that it's definitely possible to do it. Is it possible to successfully follow a vegan diet while on dialysis?
Yes. It's certainly harder. And that is something that, I don't know if you can be vegan 100% of the time, because dairy would be an important source of nutrients and also B vitamins. But that is something that you and your dietitian and your nephrologist should talk together. I think a great way to approach that is come up with a diet plan. Write down I could eat X, Y, and Z and meet all of my needs. What do you think? If you come in with more information, then that way your dietitian, your nephrologist will be like, okay, this person has really done their work. They know what they're doing. They're going to do it the right way. And they would feel more confident.
Okay. We have a fluid question. I'm a dialysis patient and have difficulty controlling my fluid levels. What can I do to reduce feelings of thirst? And will protein help me feel less thirsty?
No, protein's not going to help you feel less thirsty at all. But you can, if you, let's see now, you can freeze grapes and suck on those frozen grapes. You can chew gum. You can suck on sour candies. I know these are all probably things that you've heard before. Also, any type of fruit that has a lot of water in it. So frozen apples, watermelon, pears. Freeze all your fruit and suck on that. Don't suck on ice because that's going to melt down and be turned into fluid. A little trick that I used to do back in the day when I was, young, I would go to soccer camp and it's hot as all get out in St. Louis and it's humid and it's awful. But you'd go and you'd run all around and you're super thirsty and you drink as much as you can, but you're still too hot. I would take cold water, like the drinking fountain, and run it over my wrist where my blood supply was. And that would help cool my body down. Also, getting a frozen washcloth and when you're at your house and putting it on your head, and that'll help cool you down. It's about being hot is a lot of times where you feel like you're thirsty or have it. Getting a wet towel and freezing that and putting that around your neck when you're walking in this awful heat to the metro or the bus or the whatnot. That is another good way to keep your body cool. Staying cool will help decrease your desire for drinking.
Okay.
Oh, and don't eat a lot of salt. Salt makes you thirsty.
Thank you very much. Any difference in the way the body absorbs animal proteins versus a protein supplement?
Yeah, because those are all synthetic. All is a strong word. A lot of those are synthetic, and they're not commonly found in nature. Your body is much better at breaking down foods in its natural form, animal, plant. When we start pulling things out and making these supplements, they're very important. They do a great service, but your body can maybe absorb more of them or less. It just depends on how it's broken down. I would look for like a whey protein, because whey protein is in its most natural state.
Okay. That was the last question.
Oh my goodness.
You made it. Thank you very much, Carolyn. Great job today. I learned a lot as well, so I really appreciate you coming in and doing this today.
Okay, well, thanks. I had a great time.
Fabulous. Our next webinar will be held on Thursday, July the 26th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. In partnership with Satellite Healthcare, we present Laughter Therapy and Dialysis, Exercise, Activity, and Wellness with Dr. Paul Bennett. Laughter therapy is a unique strategy for improving health and wellness. The webinar will cover recent research exploring laughter therapy during dialysis and provide demonstrations and recommendations on how to introduce laughter therapy into your dialysis or CKD treatment program. Registration is now open. Visit kidneyfund.org/webinars for more information and to register. When today's webinar closes, please do not close your browser window. You may see a pop-up saying that the webinar has ended. Please close that pop-up and proceed to the webinar evaluation survey. Your honest feedback will help us make our webinar program the best it can be. On behalf of the American Kidney Fund, thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you next month.